Everyone says renting is throwing money away. That's not entirely true, and honestly, that advice is usually oversimplified. But there is a massive wealth gap opening up in Arizona right now, and most people completely misunderstand where it's actually coming from. So prices in Phoenix have flattened out this April, and while everyone else is waiting for a crash to save a few bucks, they're missing out on roughly a 15K to 25K per year net worth opportunity, depending on the scenario, of course. So today I'm breaking down a real Tempe scenario with real 2026 numbers to show you exactly how the gap works. First, renting is not a mistake. If you need the flexibility, or you're in a transitional phase, or your debt to income is too high, renting is a valid tool. The problem is when renting becomes your default instead of your strategy, because renting is a pure consumption expense. It's like buying groceries. Once you eat the food, the money is gone. Nothing wrong with that. But ownership is different. It's the only way to turn your largest monthly bill into an asset that actually pays you back. And I'm making this specifically for people in their 20s and early 30s here in Arizona because we're the ones getting hit the hardest by this. Came into adulthood during rising prices, higher rates, and a lot of confusion about what the right move even is. So if you felt like ownership is out of reach, or you're not sure when you're supposed to make that move, this is exactly what you need to understand. So let's look at a real-world East Valley home today. For the purchase price, we'll do $510,000. That's the medium home price for a 3-bedroom in Tempe, Mesa area. We're going to do a 3.5% down payment, so that's the FHA loan, which is going to be $18,000. And then the interest rate, 6.29%. That's the current April 2026 average. So your monthly payment, including taxes and insurance, is going to be $3,650. That's your monthly payment for your mortgage. Versus renting, a similar house in Tempe, it rents for about $2,400 a month. All right, this is just rough estimates. And what I want people to understand here is a lot of people see that $1,250 difference between your rent and your mortgage, and they think renting is cheaper. But here's the ownership strategy secret. Your mortgage is actually a forced savings account. So of that $3,650 of your mortgage payment, about $450 every single month goes directly towards your principal. Your principal is that forced savings account. So you aren't spending that money. You're actually just moving it from your checking account into the walls of your house. When you sell that house, you get every one of those $450 payments a month back in one giant check, right? Again, minus your selling cost though. There's closing costs at selling. But compare that to your landlord, they aren't sending you a check for your loyalty when you move out. So that's a $5,400 a year in wealth you didn't even have to work for. But it doesn't stop at your savings account. We have to look at what I call the wealth stack. So, starting off, Arizona is averaging a conservative 3% growth again. This is called appreciation. So on a 510K home, that's a 15K in value added to your name while you sleep annually. That's a conservative 3% growth. It's important to note that that is a long-term average. It could be different. It could be in the negatives. It could be 20% growth on a short-term annual base. But overall, conservative 3%, that's an extra 15K. Next up is your tax benefit. With the 2026 standard deduction at $16,000, you finally get to win on taxes. It's because your mortgage interest is so high, we calculated $31,000 a year with our numbers on mortgage payments specifically. Then you get to deduct the difference. So that can translate to roughly $4,500 to $5,000 in tax savings. Remember, only if your deductions exceed the standard deduction, which is around $16,000. In this case, it clearly does. So this isn't free money though, but it just reduces your tax bill. So the total, when you add the $5,400 in principal, the $450 a month, plus the $15,300 in appreciation growth, conservatively, and the $4,800 in tax breaks, you potentially create around $25,000 in wealth in year one. Now we just multiply that over a long period of time. Now, let's be blunt and truthful here. Ownership has its cost. You'll spend maybe $5,000 a year on maintenance. That's a rough average. So your net average is roughly around $20,000 a year, not $25,000. And this is where the mindset shift happens. Short-term thinking says, I want that extra $1,200 a month between your rent and mortgage for my lifestyle right now. And the long-term thinking says, I'm okay with a tighter budget today because I'm building a six-figure net worth for my 30-year-old self. Wealth isn't about how much you spend on rent. It's about how much you keep in assets. If you're staying for 3+ years, the rent savings are an illusion that can cost you around $15K to $25K per year in long-term net worth growth. This isn't about rent versus buy. It's about when does your housing costs start to work for you? Because once it does, your net worth just starts compounding. This is why I focus on helping people in their 20s and 30s here in Arizona. Not because everyone should buy right now, but because most people don't even realize how close they actually are or what the real numbers actually look like. And if you don't understand this early, you don't feel it immediately, but you feel it in 5 to 10 years later in your net worth. So if you want me to break this down for your situation, comment wealth gap below or just DM me on Instagram. I have my Instagram linked in the description and in my bio. I'll break it down for you for free. I'm Michael Zarch, your Arizona Ownership Strategist. I'll see you in the next one.